Good morning, dolls, and welcome to Little Gretchen's workshop. So I have several little baskets and containers I wanted to fill with flowers, but I wanted to use clay as the base to secure them, but I needed clay that wouldn't have to be cured in the oven. So dolls, let's be clear, this is not a sponsored video. This is a product that I purchased with my own money, but I wanted to share what this was useful for because I hadn't used air dry clay dolls since I was a child. After I found out about polymer clay, I never went back to air dry of any kind. But for this project, I needed a lightweight clay that would dry or harden without being cured in the oven. So let me go ahead and show you what I did. So I started things out by adding a little bit of clay to the bottom of a couple pieces from a tea set. And right in the middle of that idea, I remember I had salvaged a couple communion cups and I coated those with gesso and allowed them to dry while I went back to my little tea set. So dolls, for these two, I'm not necessarily going to fill them with flowers. I'm kind of going more of that botanical decor look. So I've got some tiny dried plants that I got out of an old floral arrangement, and I pulled the tiniest of the selection for this project. Now in this frame, I'm actually trying to re-leaf some of the stems because it's kind of old and everything dried out, so I added a little bit of tacky glue to carefully reattach the fallen leaves. And it was kind of amusing to me because when all the little tiny petals fell off, it looked kind of tragic, but I was already committed to seeing how I could salvage it. And although at first it appeared to be a very tedious project, it ended up being really relaxing, and the final look turned out to be more adorable than I had imagined. So now let's get back to these communion cups, urns. And you can see in this frame that one coat of gesso covered everything white to make it opaque. And now I'm adding a coat of acrylic paint. Now this is the base tone that I'm using because I'm going to layer it and splotch it up with some other shades to make it look like some type of stone. So while I allow my urns to dry, I went back to work on my tea set vases. Now, I'm not really even sure what part of the tea set this is, but because this set seems to be a little bit larger than 12 scale, I thought it would look better as a vase. Now, I did have some parts of the branches that all the leaves had fallen off, and since I had used up the leaves from that first plant, I used some neutral colored dry flowers that were from some flowers that I had been gifted, and I only chose the ones that didn't have any color on them for this dried setting. Now here's a close-up of me just adding globs of my tacky glue to the raw branches and then strategically placing the heads of the flowers on top of the globs of glue to hold them in place. Dolls, tacky glue is really perfect for this because it dries absolutely clear, and the glue itself adds strength to the branches and the structure. Now, dolls, again, this is one of those projects, it's a matter of personal taste. Now, for this project, I was more or less going for the shabby chic French country look, so I really wanted to keep the heads of the flowers kind of in that neutral tone. And I really think the blue vase really complemented the whole look. Now, to do a project like this, you can choose whatever type of flowers you like or have on hand. Now, I have a tendency to be kind of partial to baby's breath because the blooms are so tiny. Now, I think you dolls have gotten the general idea. I found another piece of some other types of stems, and they kind of had an interesting shape, and I did a very similar process, just arranging them in a way that I thought would look interesting. And some may wonder why I'm going through the trouble of trying to create a floral arrangement out of some remnants of a broken, dried up plant. And it's because there was a time in my life that I didn't have the supplies that I have now. And over the years, I've become quite fluid in creating things that I consider beautiful, from remnants and scraps, and what some may even consider to be trash. But with a tiny bit of glue, some time, and a little imagination, you can create lovely things for your dollhouse. So use what you have and whatever you can find, and train your eye to look for value in resources, even among the scraps. Now let me show you what else I did with the clay. Now dolls, I do have several other videos here on the channel about creating frames and creating frames with molds. But in this instance, I'm using these very same silicone molds, and instead of using liquid Sculpey and baking it, I'm just pressing this Premier stone clay right into the mold. And after I've shaped it into the mold, I'm going to allow it to dry overnight. Now this at the bottom is a mold that I created using the two-part amazing mold putty. And I'll have to show you dolls how to create that in another video. But I'm pressing it in just like I did with the silicone molds. And I was really tickled by the result because it was a lot simpler than using the liquid Fimo or Sculpey. And I really like the way it turned out. All the pieces, they feel very firm. They're not fragile. They're nice and strong. Now, I do need to do a little cleanup on the inside of the openings and a little sanding, but this is what I was able to do. Now, this is what they look like after I painted them and added a little rubbing buff and filled them with pictures. They turned out really nice. Now that you see the finished and filled picture frames, let me show you the flowers. Now, dolls, here are my little remnant dried flowers that I got from an old floral arrangement. Got a little basket that was made of burlap. And you remember I made the little urns. And as you dolls know, anytime I make something, I make it over and over again. So I found some additional flowers and made some more. So these look a little bit fuller because the little flower bunches are a little bit fresher. So I didn't have to do so much reliefing. This project was very simple and it was a lot of fun, and I hope you enjoyed it today. Now, if this is your first time watching and you want to see more content like this, go ahead and subscribe. And always look for me on Mondays after 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I quickly want to give a warm welcome to all my new subscribers, and I also want to thank you, dolls, for all your valuable feedback, letting me know that although you enjoy creating many of the things that I make here on the channel, some of the items you would be interested in purchasing. So now, due to overwhelming encouragement, Little Gretchen's Workshop now has a store on eBay. And many of the things that I created on this video will be available for a limited time. And I did make several, but things move pretty quickly, so shop early for best selection. So dolls, I have tons of things to do in my craft room and at my craft table, so let me get off of here and get back to work. And until next time, I'm looking forward to seeing you right here on Little Gretchen's Workshop. Bye bye now, dolls.